Just a quick bit of context before you watch this episode, because we actually recorded this, JP and I of Liberate recorded the episode that you're about to watch just 2 days before everything shifted. And now, since recording, you and I we debated whether to release it at all. What were you thinking at the time, JP?
My concern and that of my co-founders was that it would have been perhaps a little bit tone deaf and ill-timed to be going and putting out something in the market to say, hey, top brokers, this is the time for you to break free and go solo.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really the first thing that came to mind as to maybe why we should postpone airing our episode.
So what we did afterwards was we had a discussion. We decided that we're actually going to rewatch this episode with what we called like a post-war lens. Not that the war's over, but it's like a post-war, what did you call it? PWP, post-war pivot lens.
Pivots. Yeah.
And actually watching it back now, it did hit different because we spoke about, and you're going to hear us talk about how difficult it is to build a brokerage in Dubai, how many enter the market, which there's some shocking statistics, and just as shocking, how many quietly exit. But also we touched on points like how most founders are undercapitalized, under-resourced, and doing it alone. And how perhaps being a top biller or a top salesperson doesn't necessarily equate to being a good brokerage founder. So if anything, those points probably feel a bit more relevant now than they did then. But what we have done is, because there has been a post-war pivot, a PWP by the Liberate team, they have identified a new post-war problem, which they're solving for. So we encourage you to watch this episode, but make sure you watch episode 2 or part 2 as the follow-up, which is a bit more raw, a bit more current. JP is going to tell us what's changed and what's being tested in real time. So let this episode serve as the blueprint, but part 2 is the reality check. Right. So today we are diving into the reality of going from an agent to an agency owner. This is a very important transition. A lot of people romanticize it, and they perhaps underestimate the infrastructure that's involved that most agents will never really see until they're already in it. And I think 2025 was a year of, how many agents set up their own brokerages last year?
So I just saw a headline that the number of brokerages doubled in 2025.
So last time I checked, it was like 3,000 something.
I think it's closer now to 8,000.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And that is probably a lot of one-man bands in operation. More and more experienced agents are asking themselves the bigger question: what would it actually take to build something of my own? And to help me frame this journey, I'm joined by JP Mondalek, who is the CEO and co-founder of Liberate. It's a startup incubator studio. I mean, I'll let you describe it.
In one line, we help top brokers become awesome brokerage founders.
So for agents that are ready to take the next step, or may in the future, tune in, because we're going to cover all the things that you need to consider and some of the pitfalls perhaps and common misconceptions. The question that I often ask startup founders is, what problem are you solving for?
So based on our bottoms-up research, we noticed that in all sales organizations and brokerages, not only in the UAE, but globally, you have the Pareto law, where top 20 to 10% are generating 80 to 90% of the business. And those individuals have a very discrete type of pain point or unmet need, very different from a new broker. And we noticed that with the backdrop of a growing real estate industry that we have here, brokerage owners are under pressure to grow the agent population in the brokerages in order to maintain or grow market share. So what does that mean for these top producers? It means that the support that they are getting gets diluted, creating frustration. So they have a false choice to make, as we like to say, that either they stay at their brokerage and get lost, or they have to go out and build something of their own and do it alone, which can be scary. also the data shows that just as many brokerages that are entering the market every month, we're seeing almost the same number exiting the market. So it's really hard.
Okay.
So what Liberate is solving for is to make sure that these top producers who want to go and build something of their own are neither lost or alone.
So you put it politely, they're exiting, but it's very rarely an exit. It's a failure, right?
Yeah.
So sadly, and I think I heard this stat somewhere, 50% of agencies within the first year will close down.
I think if you look at any venture, the odds are stacked up against the founders.
Right.
It's typically 80 to 90% failure rates.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not unique to real estate. I just think some people decide to leave their brokerage thinking that the grass is greener on the other side, and it's automatically going to be better because you get to keep 100% of your commission. But the reality is brokerages here in Dubai and the UAE go out of their way in terms of providing support to their brokers, right? It's very different than the US model, where you typically see 80, even 90% of the commission kept by the broker, but literally they do and pay for everything. So here, when you exit that setup and go and build something on your own, there's a lot on your plate that you have to handle.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to talk about things that you're going to have to handle or that you may not have considered. But do you think there's a bit of prematurity as well? I mean, I know in my day in the UK, no one would dream of opening a brokerage unless they've had like 10 years experience. And I'm seeing here agents that just joined post-COVID setting up their own brokerages. So less than 3-4 years experience. Is there an optimum time?
It's more about specialism. It's about the network that you've built to be able to build something that is durable. Mm-hmm. So if you're very new to the market and you've neither built that network or that specialism, I would say the odds are stacked against you.
Tell us more about Liberate.
Yeah.
When did it start? Who are the founders? How does it all work?
It's been, just over 2 years when we came together as a group, myself, Sebastian Ritter, Alex Hutley, and of course, Abdallah Al-Ajaji, to come up with a new idea that could create disruption and innovation in the industry. And it started from that insight of these top producers feeling frustrated at their brokerage and also kind of intimidated with the idea of going and building something on their own. So that's how we started. It took us some time to do the grounds up research. We wanted to make sure in this venture that there was a very clear problem that needed to be solved and trying to size the market. And then also making sure that before we go out and talk about it publicly, that there was indeed product market fit. So all of 2025, we've been operating in stealth mode. So this is actually one of the first times that we go out in public and talk about this venture.
We do love an exclusive on Golden Nuggets, yeah.
And we're very proud of what we've built so far. We incubated 5 brokerages who have done over 200 transactions, transacted about 1 billion dirhams worth of real estate. So great start. And now we have conviction that this business model is ripe to scale. And so this year, our plan is to go out and be a bit more aggressive in terms of educating the market and brokers that we are here to make sure that you are never lost or alone, and educating brokers who have this desire to go build something of their own, build teams, and tell them that we can give them that support to ensure that they don't end up in that 80 to 90% count. Right?
And you've already got some brands that some people might be aware of already, but not realize that they are Liberate founders. So just tell us about some of those 5.
We've got the 5, and they're all slightly different from one another, because it's our view that every one of these brokerages should be different. We're not trying to create cookie cutter brokerages. Right. So for example, we have 11 & Co. 11 & Co., 2 ladies, Liddell Blackwell and Rachel Colsertz, ex-Blackbrick agents, who decided that they wanted to build something of their own. And they were referred to us by another broker who knew what we were doing, had heard that they were thinking about building something of their own. And they actually had another party that was willing to basically give them money to go and pursue it. But ultimately, they chose Liberate because Liberate isn't just providing financial support to get you up and running, but also all of the experience across the 4 founders, all of the technology and admin support that we provide. So they saw the value, and we're super proud of them. It's been less than a year. It's now an organization of 13 brokers spread across Dubai and Abu Dhabi, and they're doing incredibly well, especially in villa communities, where they were very clear and intentional about who their market was going to be, which was typically expats that are relocating to the UAE. Most of their agents are parents, so they understand that journey, which their clients can relate to. And so here we are. They're on track to do double-digit million in gross this year. So that's one of the portfolio. The other one is CityGlow, which are ex-driven agents who also felt it was time to move on and do something of their own.
Nina and Milena, shout out. Know them very well.
Nina and Milena Dordovic, sisters, who came to us and were also very deliberate about their specialism, about only focusing on City Walk. Nina on sales, Milena on leasing. And they've also knocked it out of the park. Just sold a penthouse a few weeks ago. Also very proud of them.
I actually live in City Walk. And of course, there's a City Walk WhatsApp group. And anytime there's a request for, can someone recommend an agent? You just say, Nina. I second that. I third that. So yeah, she's been there since 8 years in City Walk.
I think even longer, actually. I think she started her career in 2016.
Okay.
But what we love about that brand is just how intentional and how focused they are about the community that they serve. And like you said, they've created these WhatsApp groups with these owners who are frankly sometimes frustrated about the lack of support from, say, the Owners Association, et cetera. And Nina acts as their ambassador and helps them out. And, she's been putting out thought pieces and guides around the community, not your typical, transactional reports, but being able to explain, like, why did this unit transact at this price? And what's the view? Because she's one of those incredible people that you show her one photo of one corner of one property. She knows the building. She may even know the unit.
Yeah, and the owner and everything.
So we love working with that account as well, with her and her sister. And then on the other end, we have a solopreneur. We have Rona Rahim, right? Rona was a top agent at Axe Capital for 3 years running, selling, $1 billion dirhams worth of real estate a year, very off-plan focused. And so we partnered with Rona, who was also very intentional about wanting to build her personal brand. And she spends now a lot of time with developers, assisting them, introducing them to the market and collaborating with them and collaborating with other brokers. So she's been a lot of fun to work with too.
She's great on social media. Very distinctive brand.
And glad that you touched on that. So that content is being produced and directed by the Liberate team. So our work doesn't stop at the day-to-day admin, deal management, technology, etc. But it's also we lean into the growth. And with Rona, her growth is going to be very much modeled around building awareness in the marketplace, right? Beyond just to the consumers, but to other brokers and then to developers. Yeah.
And for people who don't know, tell us about your background, history, where you came from. Seb, Alex.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of our what makes Liberate so interesting for the partners is that from day one, you get thought and operating partners to work with you while you retain 100% of your business. So obviously you want someone who knows this industry inside out and has a track record and proven that they can do it. And that's Abdullah Al-Ajaji, who founded Driven Properties. So have Abdullah, and then you've got Seb, who led product and tech at Dubizzle, managed over 200 people there, and we know the success story of Dubizzle. He also did the same at Hausa. And then Alex was, in his last role in the OLX group, which is the parent company of Dubizzle, was the global head of brands. So building brands and storytelling to millions of consumers. So if you think about the journey of incubating a brokerage, you need to build a brand that stands out from the crowd, because as we discussed, Dubai doesn't need another brokerage. What it needs is an intentional, thoughtful, professional brokerage with strong operators and brokers in it. So this is where Alex's strength comes to light, and he's able to help understand, what makes Nina or Rachel Liddell or Rona or Stefan or Sunny and Sham special. What's given them their success to date? So we decode that. We do these workshops that Alex has designed, and then that informs the brand that we create. Every single one of these 5 brands we built from scratch. They did not previously exist. So that's the skill set that Alex brings, and Alex's obsession around the customer. And then myself, my background, I started in finance, in Wall Street, and in investments in private equity. But then since I moved back to Dubai, where I grew up in 2012, I've been in operating roles at Uber, at Dubizzle, at Amazon, Hausa, and now at Liberate.
Exciting stuff. Okay, so solid founding team, and you're looking to back and build other founders. So for the ambitious agent that is watching this or listening to this, thinking, could that be me? Tell us who you're looking for.
So now that we've got 5 quarters under our belt, I think our definition of ideal customer profile has evolved. I think at the beginning it was purely about how much did you bill, but I think as important, if not more important, is the mindset, because you could be an agent that is bringing in 20 plus million a year, but have absolutely zero intention of wanting to lead an organization, build a team around you, and you're happy to make as much cash as possible. And I have complete respect for that persona. But I think the Liberate persona that we're looking for is someone that has that itch to scratch and wants to do something more and wants to build their own legacy, right? So we're looking for someone who has that mindset. Yes, has a track record. Because our economic split is advantageous to this broker founder, we need to make sure that the production of that business is high enough to justify the lower take rate that we charge.
Don't worry, we'll find out how advantageous very soon.
But we're looking for brokers that are doing, let's call it around 3 to 4 million at least a year of gross commission. But then once you model in the team that they're going to build around them, then very quickly we're looking at a single brokerage that does double-digit million of gross a year.
And quite often, agents won't go it alone. They will go into partnership with, or they'll set up with a colleague of theirs or someone that they've worked with that they've known for a while. And as demonstrated with 2 of your portfolio companies, you've got duo founders. So is that a thing?
So we have 2 partners that are siblings. So we already talked about City Glow with Nina and Milena, sisters. But then we also recently onboarded Purian and High, which are the Savani twins, Sunny and Sham, who also have an incredible track record and have worked at big organizations and even started their own in the past. So, and they're also super intentional about what they do. They specialize in penthouses, trophy assets. And so because anybody who has tried to build a business before knows how hard and lonely it can be, having that buddy, having that sibling can help a lot. And in the case of Rachel and Liddell, they're obviously not related, but were colleagues in their previous brokerage, and definitely get to lean on each other. But that's also Liberate's role, because we recognize building a business is hard and can be lonely. And so you've got 4 buddies to lean on to. And so depending on what the need is, if it's access to a developer or to get into a hot project, if it's advice about the business plan, specifically about real estate, obviously Abdullah has a wealth of knowledge there. If it's about optimizing the technology and automation and using AI and tools, Sebastian is there, building the brand and storytelling and standing out. You have Alex. And in terms of the day-to-day operations and on deals, I'm there to support them.
Okay. And be honest, which agent would you quietly pass on?
The agent that is absolutely clear and has zero interest in wanting to build something of their own. It's not worth trying to do the hard sell and convince them otherwise. I would much rather work with someone, even if frankly they're just at the cusp of that cutoff that I mentioned in terms of production, but has the right mindset and and has the ambition to want to build something of their own and build teams and lead teams. That's the ideal partner.
Let's talk about some of the common misconceptions. I'd like to get the top 3 misconceptions that you've heard over and over again or witnessed.
So the first one is that it's glamorous, and the reality is that there's a lot of hard work. There's low lows before you get to the high highs, right? And so one way we try to solve for that is making sure you're never lost or alone and leaning in. So that's one misconception. The second misconception is that I go solo, I'll clip more, and therefore I will be more successful. But if you look at the data, it suggests otherwise. So again, the problem that Liberate is solving for is making sure that the starting point in that journey is very different. So instead of starting from ground zero and having to do everything by yourself and be distracted and not being able to produce, you've got the entire backbone there for you. You've got all of that advice. You've got all of the combined learning successes and failures of the Liberate founders to share, to ensure that you don't make those same mistakes and that you double down on all of the success stories.
Because people forget about things like CRM even.
Right.
You need a good PRO. Like what? Just bullet point some of the considerations.
One thing that people kind of overlook is the fact that when you're a new brokerage, you're probably not going to get a lot of love or FaceTime from the big developers, right? So it's no secret. My co-founder is Abdullah, and Abdullah leads a 700 man and woman agency, one of the top in the country. And so one of the unfair advantages about being a Liberate partner is, other than the support you get from Liberate, you also get access to the driven infrastructure if you want it. And so let's say you've got existing clients that you've brought on board to your new business and they have stock and you want to sell that stock, you can collaborate automatically, not only with the Liberate Guild, which I think we should talk about, but also with these 700 brokers who are incredible. So last year, for example, we did over 100 million worth of transactions with other driven agents to collaborate. And so that gets the flywheel spinning from day one. Access to very hot project launches with driven support from day one. And then in the beginning, I think it's a misconception going back that as a new brokerage, I automatically need to go and invest in a fancy office. So you can grow into that, but until you do, these Liberate partners also have access to the beautiful Forbes office that is now in MR Square, Building 3.
Yeah, which also comes with its own in-house hairstylist.
Yeah, and a de-stress room and a candy room. So it's a nice place to be. But then that other misconception, right, is that, it just cost me 30,000 dirhams to get a license and I'm free.
Right.
The reality is, when you start to add up the cost of, let's say you focus on secondary ready, you need the presence on the portals. You need photography, videography. You need the admins to help you with the listings. You need someone who's technically savvy to do all the implementation of the CRMs, the setups of it, because they don't come out of the box set up for you. Building and designing your website. You could easily rack up 1 million dirhams in costs in the first year.
Right.
And at the same time, thinking about compliance and accounting and admin and tax and all of that, you could easily see a scenario where someone who was a top biller suddenly screeching to a halt in doing this. And then again, so that brings us back to, where does Liberate come in? Liberate relieves you from all of this responsibility and stress, allows you to focus on building that team around you, allows you to focus on your clients and your network, and unlocking your network and the networks of those around you, but then also tapping into the network of the guild. So the Liberate Guild, I think, is the heart of the future Liberate success story will be. Because think about it. If we are successful in the next 3 to 5 years to incubate 30 to 50 of these brokerages led by these incredible entrepreneurs and founders with our support, you could build an incredibly liquid network of clients backed by these incredible operators, creating this high deal velocity, and where we would be able to attract inventory from owners because they say, wow, I have a penthouse in City Walk. Well, there's nobody else better to do this than Nina, right? Or I've got a penthouse in downtown. I want to work with the Savanis, with Pyrian and High. I want to get access to this incredibly hot off-plan project like we just saw in DIFC. Well, Stéphane Maman of Prestige Immobilier was able to secure 4 units. And it goes on and goes on and goes on. And they're able to work with each other and making sure that, because we have this shared backbone, I don't have to worry about funny business, right? So that's kind of the end game. The end game is having these incredibly professional businesses with brands that stand out, that can open up their networks with each other to accelerate deal velocity. Because the hardest thing today, and you've probably heard this on the show, is lead generation.
Right.
But I've got my network of clients, you've got your network of clients, I might have the stock, you might have the buyer, we collaborate. And I think the future is going in that direction, because you're starting to see a reduction in the return on investment on digital campaigns, on portals. And so you need to find other ways to generate business. And we think this is the way.
Let's do some back of the envelope numbers, because when I had Emra on, Emra's the founder of Equity, yeah. And he spent well over $1 million because he got a really fancy office also in Mile Square. But he was saying minimum 250,000. I actually thought you could do it for less, but he said minimum 250,000.
Yeah.
What's your baseline minimum? Like, don't even think about opening a brokerage if you haven't got how much in your account.
I would not even think about it if you don't have at least $1 million dirhams, frankly. And even the $1 million is going to be tight, because there are going to be months where you may not be producing as much. And again, this is to do it on your own, right? And so this is, again, one of the value propositions of Liberate, is that we're relieving you a lot of that upfront cost to get going. And then once your flywheel accelerates, and you've got the brokers on board, you're selling, etc., then that's where you can start to use those additional points that you're clipping on. This is maybe where we can start talking about the economic splits. But our split starts at 75 to the broker, 25 to Liberate. So if, let's say, you were previously on 60 and now you're at 75, well, that extra 15 points can go towards your growth marketing. And guess what? Liberate also has an incredible marketing team to help design, capture, and execute those campaigns. And then you can use that incremental income towards funding those campaigns and doing the media buying. But if you did that all on your own, and you had to factor in the cost of the production to create the content, the campaigns, the portal expenditure to compete, you could easily be in the millions very quickly.
So it's $1 million versus how much would be the initial investment into Liberate?
Literally, the only initial investment is, because it's your company, we just ask that you pay for the company setup fees, but that's it. And then we've got a dedicated admin team for you, a marketing team, tech and product team to get your CRM and your website going, setting up all the automations. And then, like I said, the business plan, the brand workshop. I would imagine to do that workshop, that brand workshop, some third party would easily charge you 50 to 100,000 dirhams to do that, right? So if you really want to itemize it, Sylvia, you could easily get well over 1 million dirhams. But I think the way that a lot of people have gone into this with false information, thinking that it's a lot easier, go in, they are undercapitalized, they are under-resourced. Most often they do it alone. And that's where they get into trouble and start to find themselves lost and alone.
Okay. So we're going to do a technical deep dive into the Liberate founder journey.
Sure.
I want to start with the beginning. How does it start? If someone's watching this and decides they want to explore launching through Liberate, what is literally the first step?
The first step is to get in touch. We obviously also do our own cold outreach because up until date, we've been operating in stealth mode. But over time, we're going to be talking more about this business, and we're going to be sharing case studies of some of the success stories that we've had, and we expect that's going to drive traffic to us. So number one, get in touch. We've got a pre-screening form for people to fill, so we can get to understand them a bit more. What do they specialize in? The clients that they are they local? Are they overseas? Are they off-plan? Are they secondary focused? The types of properties that they sell, their past years of production, so we can understand the size of their business that they're starting with, and that's the step one, because we also need to make sure that we're focusing on the right candidates. And then the next step is we invite them in, we get to know them a little bit better, share more about our proposition, see if there's a fit. If there's a fit, we go into a workshop with them. We sign a brokerage as a service agreement with them, which is an agreement that says Liberate provides this in exchange for that 25% split of gross. And then we go down the path of company setup, tech and brand setup, and then go live. Once your license is up and running, your bank account is set up, it takes about 2 months.
2 months.
2 months from start to finish. Because what we do is we parallel process. We don't like to waste time. So while your company set up and your bank account is getting set up, which takes roughly about 2 months, we're doing the workshops, we're setting up your tech, we're building your business plan.
Okay. And founder readiness. So beyond that being ambitious, how do you determine whether someone's actually ready to become a founder? I mean, do you look at their runway, perhaps their financial runway?
Because we are alleviating a lot of that financial cost and upfront financial costs, that's not the concern. There's psychology is a big part of this, right? We just need to make sure that they are in the right mindset, because the worst thing that can happen is do a hard sell. The person wasn't in the right mindset, and then you realize that, very quickly in the first year. So the important thing is to make sure that they've got a plan. We're all aligned on the plan, and this is where the workshopping and the business plan comes into play, and we sign off on that, and then we go and execute against it. And then wherever they hit roadblocks or they feel that they need help, we lean in.
So it's not necessarily that they have to have already established their own strong personal brand or have a team yet. What else are you assessing?
Look, if they've already identified who they want to bring on board, that's amazing. But if they need help in recruiting, we help there. What Liberate is not trying to do, we're not trying to build necessarily personal brands. We want to build businesses. And I think that goes back to the mindset. We are not for brokers who want to go and be solopreneurs, lone wolves who want to build their personal brands. I think what we've come to realize that Liberate is best for brokers who have the ambition of building a business that is bigger than them, that will, outgrow them and outlast them. And in order to do that, they need to be intentional in their mindset that I want to build a business. I want to build a team around me. I want us to stand for something. I want us to have a specialism, whether that specialism is in a community, an area, a product type. or type of customer. That's the type of client we're looking for. And we discover that going through the multiple rounds of meetings and workshops and surveys and business planning together.
So if you are one of those brokers who just wants to stay solo for the long term, but have a nice brand and have all the support, it's not. It's
probably not for you. It's probably not for you. I think you're probably better off staying at your brokerage of record and then investing in yourself on your own personal channels, right? And maybe getting a social media agency to help you out with that, which I've started to see more and more often, because the reality is, if I'm a brokerage principal, I'm not going to go and build, say you're an agent in my brokerage, I'm not going to go and help build Silvia's brand. At the end of the day, all of the campaigns that we do are going to go build the mother brand, right? So they would have to go and invest into that out of their own pocket. But I think once you're ready to go and build a business and take advantage of all of the systems, the access, the network, the tech, the brand building, the storytelling that Liberate can provide to you, that's where there's a great fit.
Okay.
And again, we knew this when we set up Liberate, that this was not going to be a business that would serve thousands of brokers. Our ambition is to build 30 to 50 businesses in the coming years. And so this isn't for everyone. And so it is quite selective. Year one, we started with a cohort of 5, where we've now opened our second cohort. We're extremely selective and choiceful about who we bring on board. And so this year we're looking to add another 6. We might grow our cohorts in the coming years, but this year we're quite intentional. We're looking for people who want to build and lead teams, who have a strong specialism that they can bring to the table, we can help them elevate that niche and go to market and communicate that niche so that they can be more successful at generating business and helping them collaborate with the existing guild, and again, the access to the driven network.
And is there going to be a kind of conflict at some stage where, okay, you've already got a city walk specialist.
Yeah.
If someone else is listening who's a city walk specialist, are you unlikely to take them on?
Because we're not looking to build hundreds or thousands, I think we can manage. There are enough communities, there's enough product types, off-plan, secondary. Like in the case of Nina, she's very much a secondary ready, OG, original city walk specialist. So, to use a real life example, when we do our bi-weekly catch-ups with our businesses, when I sit with Nina and Milena, the conversation has been, let's expand outside of the original city walk. Let's go into Central Park and let's look at neighboring communities, right? And so that's where we can help these businesses expand their funnel. And that's where maybe that agent who's thinking, maybe rather than them doing it from scratch, maybe they can join City Glow and lead the effort to, say, go into, just to use a hypothetical, to go in and expand City Glow outside of City Walk into, say, the canal, right? Which is something we're thinking about doing right now, actually.
It's a natural progression,
It's a natural progression, easily cross-sellable because the price points are very similar. It's in Al-Wasl, right? So that's a perfect example of where Liberate sits down and uses our knowledge and our market access and data to help these brokers build a go-to-market strategy and go, okay, I used to be a top broker in City Walk and I could make 5 to 6 million of gross, but then how do I build a 20 million or 30 million gross business? And that's the value add that we provide. And we can help them find that canal specialist that may be feeling underserved in their current brokerage and wants to work in an environment where we can be high tech and high touch with them for them to stand out and to compete better.
And one of the other challenges that any new brokerage has is, of course, you've got your specialization. I mean, especially from Abdullah's journey, he started very early with sales, holiday homes, leasing,
Mm-hmm.
interior design. You've got to have the verticals and the sister companies. So how does that work with, how do you encourage that kind of scaling?
I think it's better for them to focus on the brokerage in the beginning and tap and use this unfair advantage that you have, that you can tap into the driven network. And if you have a client who has a need to do, let's say, short-term leasing, etc., use these businesses and get compensated for it rather than going and building it from scratch and again getting distracted. Now, if you find over time that this is such a big part of our business and part of your identity, then go and expand into that vertical. Don't do it all from the beginning. I think Abdullah's journey is an extremely relevant case study that underpins what Liberate is trying to do, is trying to create the next generation of Abdullahs, of Louis Alsops in the market, right? Ambitious brokers who understood the game, that at some point you reach a ceiling in terms of your network and wanting to grow beyond your personal network and sharing that network and putting in systems and mechanisms in place and building a brand that people can identify with to build a business. And so I think this is where Abdullah's journey is very relevant, of going from a deal maker into a business owner and starting with his network and then reaching that ceiling and then realizing I need to surround myself with extremely talented people, which he did very early on, that have helped build Driven. And then
myself included.
Yourself included.
It's what brought me here in 2017. Yeah,
exactly. And I think, Abdullah said it himself. He is extremely proud to see someone like Nina, who started her career at Driven, move on to be her own boss and build her own business. It makes him incredibly proud. And I think, if you look at all of these, top brokerages in Dubai, many of them started at Smith & Ken, which maybe some of the newer brokers don't even know about. And they've spun out and become their own. In the finance world, we have, Tiger Global, which is a big hedge fund. And now there are the Tiger Cubs, which spun out and became extremely successful hedge funds. So I think the market is big enough. And it doesn't have to be so concentrated amongst a handful of brokerages. And I think there's a lot of talent out there who have yet to realize their full potential. And that's the journey that we're on. We're trying to help these people realize their full potential and liberate that potential in both business and in life, because we know how hard it can be, and give them back that time so that they can dedicate it not only back to their business, but also to their families, right? Because success can also come at a great cost. So I think Abdullah is a wonderful inspiration for these Liberate partners that we bring on board, because he's a living example of going through that journey from being that solopreneur and becoming a business owner. And so, again, we're helping them have a leapfrog start and de-risk them from having to do it from the ground level, giving them back that time, giving them all of that combined experience that we have as a Liberate founding team, access to the guild, access to the Driven network, and enabling them to be more successful, not only them, but also the brokers that they recruit.
I don't know if have you coined that phrase, BAAS, BAS, brokerage as a service.
Yeah. We've not seen it before, so we're happy to claim it.
Right, so you heard it here first. Brokerage as a service, instead of, I'm used to hearing SaaS, which is software as a service. So here we have brokerage as a service. So I want you to just explain the difference between being employed by an agency as a top 5% broker, right? We're going to compare them. We're going to compare a Liberate partner and compare it to going out and setting up your own brokerage. So licensing, how does it vary between the three?
So let's start with the status quo. Status quo, you go and sign up at a pre-existing brokerage and you need to get your broker card. So simply take the examination, pass it, the brokerage sponsors your visa. You now are able to operate in Dubai or in Abu Dhabi as a licensed broker.
2-year visa.
2-year visa, typically the brokerages are going to impose that, if you leave prematurely, etc., they may hit you with a training fee, etc., because of the opportunity cost and whatnot. But there's no salary. Whatever you bring in, you split, and then you work your way through slabs.
And typically the slabs, I mean, bare minimum I'd say is 50-50.
50-50, but we've even heard that there are some brokerages, some of the bigger names in town that even start the other way around, where it might be in their favor because they say, we're going to be investing in you, we're going to be training you. So actually it's going to be 40 for you, the broker.
Okay.
And then once you get past that probation period and you've done your first 1 or 2 deals, then you get to 50-50. Some have even structured it where they buddy you with someone, and to compensate that experienced broker to buddy with you, that 10% goes to them, right? And 50 to the brokerage. And then you work your way through the slabs. And depending on the brokerage, you have some big Western brokerages that adamantly will not go past 60%, and therefore they keep 40. But you have on the other extreme, you have these low-cost brokerage models where they literally give you a desk and a license to hang your hat on, but you pay for the portals, you pay for your marketing, you pay for the photography, videography, and they may give you 80%. But then you're really on your own. And that works for some. That works for some people that maybe might be selling off plan, etc. Then you've got the go out and build this on your own,
which you might think you're getting 100%.
You think you're getting 100%, but then you're also getting 100% of the costs, and you're also responsible for 100% of all the things that you need to do, which then means that you've now diluted yourself and cannot service your clients, cannot run the business properly, and usually what ends up happening, your production actually declines tremendously. So this is where...
So you're getting 100% of less, effectively, with more spend.
And definitely 200% more stress. And then column 3 is where you are going out and building your business. You are on the hook for the company setup fees, which, we can estimate around 50-odd thousand, especially if you're going to add some employees and whatnot. But then everything else has been pretty much taken care of for you by Liberate. So from a financial perspective, you've been de-risked. But also to make this truly disruptive, putting on my Amazon hat, you have to give more value and charge less. And so our starting point is 75-25. That's why we also have the minimum in terms of you need to have had a demonstrated track record of doing at least $1 million a year of gross. And then we do have an incremental slab that if you do more than 1 million dirhams of gross in any given month, the first million is clipped at 75-25 and everything above is at 80-20. And then as you build teams around you, that affords you to be able to give them better slabs. And then we split the difference because we act like partners. So let's just say Silvia joins a Liberate partner, you decide to get back in the game and you join Nina. And let's say you worked your way up to the 60 slab. Nina and her brokerage would split the remaining 40 half-half, so 20-20. So Nina would be generating 20% on your production. So if you start building out teams of 10, 20, 30 over the coming years, and these are all hand-picked, strong brokers because you're not trying to build a 500 plus operation, then you could very, very well see yourself making an incremental, millions a year on top of whatever it is that you generate yourself. So that's the difference across the 3 models. We think this is a great hack to enable not only these top talents to be able to do more and achieve more while still, and I think this is the part that is misunderstood when you stay at a brokerage and you build, is the equity value. You own the business. That's something, that brand that you've built is your brand, is the business's brand. And you're building not only the brand equity, but you're also building the financial equity that in the future you could then on sell. You're building passive income streams that when you work for someone else, the second you go on holiday, your earnings go to zero. Whereas here, you could very well be on the beach in Saint-Tropez, and you've got your team at various times of the year generating significant amount of cash flow for you. And or it could be a business that you hand down. So we are creating a new category. It's going to take some time to educate the market about it. So this is why we're here today. It's not for everyone, but what we've been able to see over the last year or so is that if we work with the right partner who has the right mindset, has built a specialism that we can build an awareness around, we can help them build a very successful business with limited financial risk on their side.
And I want to understand what, in the worst case scenario, let's say someone joins, sets up, 6 months in, they want to call it a day. What happens then?
So in our BAS agreements, we have a 4-month lead time from the time you decide you want to pull the plug to when we shut down. It's really not about us, but it's more to protect them because we're running their website, their CRM, the portals, accounting, compliance, etc. So
it needs time to wind down.
Or for example, if you decide you want to do it on your own, or you want another partner to do this for you, it's to be able to hand over these things. So the current way that the BAS agreement works, it's an evergreen contract. And then if there is a wind down scenario or an exit scenario, we have clauses in there to solve for that.
Of course, every startup founder is thinking about the end goal, which is exit at some point. And you and I both know it's very difficult to value real estate companies because as they say, their assets have legs. It's very difficult to value it. So how do you deal with that exit process, valuation? Talk to us about the end goal.
So it's very early in the Liberate journey, but we have created mechanisms that if they did want to sell, that we could buy their businesses. We have the right of first refusal to buy their businesses, or at least if they got an offer to match that offer. But if they needed help with succession planning, financial estate planning, or even doing a roadshow to sell that business, Abdullah and myself are ex-private equity professionals, so we could help them in that journey to do that. But like I said, we have that mechanism, and if they've built a really nice, robust business, and we've all succeeded in building a business and a brand that has outgrown that individual and outlasted that individual, that has value. And surely there are going to be lieutenants in that business that maybe want to be part of the equity journey. We can help them in that succession planning, maybe even giving them a path to continue to run and build and own that business, right? While giving liquidity to the founder.
So now I want to touch on operational support provided by Liberate. So what pains do you remove? And versus what remains with the broker? Like, what do you still have to take care of as the agency owner, founder?
Liberate is not just a outsourcing solution. We are your partner in this journey from incubation to day-to-day operation and growth. We've got 4 incredible co-founders, each with a distinct specialism that leans in to help you at each stage of the journey. Yes, we help with day-to-day administration, with your books, with your listings, with your photography, your content creation, deal management, conveyancing, all of the things that a broker would typically expect from their brokerage, we help with.
Within that 25%?
Within that 25%.
Okay.
Like I said, what you're on the hook for is the company setup. Once you start expanding and building a team and you need an office, that cost is on you. If you need help in terms of us subsidizing it or putting in some sort of a facility where you can pay back for that cost over time, we're happy to work with the entrepreneur on a case-by-case basis if their business is big enough and can justify it. If on growth marketing, we have the capability and we are doing it at scale. You mentioned Rona. We've done some incredible campaigns for Rona online and help build her brand. But if you want to go and put performance dollars behind it, that would be on you. But again, the superior commission split that you get affords the entrepreneur to do that and to fund for that. And then we also, beyond that, take care of the things that people don't really talk about, which it's 2026 and it's not the Wild West anymore in Dubai real estate. We have compliance and KYC and AML that we need to do. So we also provide that compliance officer for each one of our businesses to make sure that they are compliant and we do the correct due diligence on each of the clients that we work with. So that's all handled for you. But then where it gets really interesting is not the setup, which is very generic, which is not, I would say, the day-to-day administrative support. It's in the growth function.
Yes, let's talk about that then.
It's the growth piece. And it starts with the thought leadership that comes from the four Liberate partners that sit down with you to understand your ambition, understand your specialism, and work with you. And we put our heads together of like, how can we scale this? Or what other opportunities or clients are not being tapped that you could be tapping? And I use that CityGlow example. And that's a real life case study right now of how we're going to expand CityGlow beyond the original CityWalk to grow that business. It's in all of the campaigns and content-led marketing that we're doing to build thought leadership in the market, so that we are giving in public and kind of doing business in private, right? And introducing those concepts to these brokers and executing it with high quality, production value. It's the access to the industry, enabling them to be able to do deals at a higher velocity, giving, say, off-plan agents the ability to navigate through this flurry of launches that come up and which ones to focus on and which ones have been doing well, and providing them with that data and support to get allocation. That's the part where it gets really, really interesting with these partners.
So now you're 5 quarters in, or 5 quarters deep. What would you say success looks like within that first 12 months?
I think onboarding well is critical, and making sure that we understand very well what that founder is trying to achieve, the segment of the market that they're going after, giving them the access that they need to go after it quickly. If they need support in recruiting quickly and recruiting the right people, setting up their online presence, their social presence, as we like to call it, be it the website, their brand, their tone of voice, their socials, all of the technology stack, that starts from the CRM, the source of truth, which is plugged into all of the different channels, be it portals, be it the campaigns that we're driving, so that all of those leads come into one place that they can service. And we're building proprietary technology that's super exciting around prospecting tools, around automation of how to manage your existing network and stay on top of them so that you're top of mind. Because, for example, even the top brokers who have been in the market for years and years have probably touched thousands of people. I bet you they cannot remember the conversation that they had with someone, say, 3 months ago, and then may have missed on that opportunity. So this brain that we're building on top of the CRM is there to ensure that opportunities are not missed. And so that person that you're like scrolling down your WhatsApp and you're like, oh shoot, I forgot to reach out to that person, that doesn't happen. And so it's almost like you've got this army of digital support staff around you, making sure that you're on top of your network and you're top of mind so that you transact when the time is right.
Is there any AI involved in your...
100%, 100%. And also, because we're obsessing about the brokers in everything that we do, we understand that they live in WhatsApp. They don't live in CRMs. And so we're also...
CRM, don't
they?
Yeah.
So, we're trying to, let's say, CRMize WhatsApp and structuring all of that information in a way that is digestible and usable by the broker.
Okay. So we'll continue with our startup terms. Proof of concept.
Yeah.
So you've demonstrated with these 5 brands,
Mhm.
and you've just taken on your 6th brand recently. You've launched 5 already, so you've got proof of concept. You know it works. I want to know from you if there's any patterns that you've noticed across these founders, and maybe dive into one of the success stories.
So a great example is 11 & Co. 2 top brokers at who had chosen to move on from their previous brokerage and decided to build something of their own. Extremely intentional about what they were trying to build, who their clients were, what communities they wanted to serve, and just wanted to make sure that when they go out and do this, that the odds were not stacked against them. And so 11 & Co., which is led by Rachel Colsertz and Liddell Blackwell, is a great example of the type of broker founder that we want to work with, who has already in a very short amount of time built a fantastic team of brokers that are doing great things in communities like JGE and Victory Heights and Barari and Arabian Ranches and Sustainable City, and soon to be expanding to other villa communities in Dubai. And also in Abu Dhabi, which Rachel leads, and she's built a wonderful team over there that is now breaking into the fast-growing Abu Dhabi off-plan market and into popular villa communities in Saadiyat and others. So that's a wonderful example of a brand that we created from scratch, and already they are generating multiples of the gross commission that they would have had they been individual brokers.
And what do you think tipped them over to Liberate rather than setting up on their own?
So actually they had an alternative on the table, which was an investor that was going to give them capital to go out and do this. But I think they very quickly realized, that we're going to have to speak with a dozen different vendors to do all the different things for us. And then we're going to have to foot the bill for all of these service providers to get going. So I think the value that they saw in Liberate, number one, was the expertise that they were getting and the support from the 4 Liberate founders. It was the fact that the financial risk had been taken out of the equation. It was the fact that they had gotten a taste of in the journey of workshopping with us how we think, the fresh mindset. Because other than Abdullah, Seb, Alex, and myself don't come from the industry, so we're able to look at challenges and opportunities with a fresh mindset, but also from a growth mindset, because we've also successfully built and scaled businesses across verticals. So they enjoyed that and they liked that energy that came to the table. And then obviously there's a lot of value that the partnership with Driven brings to a lot of these new businesses to get going, right? So it's recycling those listings and passing them on to other brokers at Driven to be able to pass on to their clients and to be able to sell. And like I said, we've sold well over 100 million dirhams worth of real estate just through that channel. So that gave them a lot of confidence, being able to get access to project launches that they normally wouldn't. The collaboration, like even in Abu Dhabi, wonderful collaboration between 11 & Co Abu Dhabi and Driven Abu Dhabi. Whether it's a client coming from overseas that needs support to get their first office space, or getting access to a hot launch in Abu Dhabi. We're seeing that real time in front of us.
Did any of the portfolio brands have anything in common? Did they launch at similar stages of their careers? Were they team leaders, solo agents? What are the consistencies or variations?
Consistency is success. They had a proven track record of being successful brokers, and I think that's the starting point. And then number two, the mindset of wanting to build a business. But then after that, there's a healthy amount of differentiation across the brands. Sometimes also intentionally, because we don't want so early on in our journey to have cannibalization. But if you look at, say, Stéphane Maman, who started his career only a few years ago in Dubai, but has become a prolific seller of off-plan. But he started as being a DIFC specialist, where he had sold a big number of units in Buj Daman, but then pivoted into off-plan, and now he's been a powerhouse for Liberate in terms of selling some of the hottest projects in town, like this recent DIFC residences in DIFC 2.0, or the Janu, or the Rove HQ selling in bulk. So that's one example. Then on the other extreme, very far away from off-plan, but into secondary ready villa communities, you've got 11 & Co, which has now become an organization of 13 brokers, very different from Stefan, who is currently still a one-man show. Then you've got two sibling brands, right? You've got City Glow and Pyrian and High, Nina and Milena and Sunny and Sham. One is a community-focused brand, whereas the other is more a product-focused brand, which is typically penthouses and apartments in luxury residences in downtown or the marina, etc. So quite distinct. And then, of course, Rona, who stands in her own category of being, if anything, a broker celebrity, who brings decades of experience with her, where she's now acting as a consultant and an advisor to developers. So very, very distinct.
And with your portfolio of companies, was there anything that slowed them down? And on the opposite side, is there anything that you saw that accelerated their success?
Absolutely. So I think in typical classic founder dilemma is trying to do everything yourself, right? And so yes, even though Liberate is here to support you and alleviate you of certain things, but it's getting over this hump that I need to share this responsibility of, let's say, my network, right? So can I possibly service all of the people that I've touched in the past, or do I need to now start bringing on other brokers and passing on leads to them, or sharing some of my contacts with them? Because you can do a lot more when you've got more people to service. And so I think that's the part that may not come naturally at first. And I think that's something we're trying to filter out more so for in cohort 2. But that's definitely something that we saw in the first batch that could have slowed down people. And then on the flip side, the proof is in the pudding. When we see brands like 11 & Co that were very intentional, we want to build teams, and goes out and builds a rock star team of community specialists, they can do great things, and they can force multiply the production of their business versus if it was still just Liddell and Rachel.
And what would be the benefit? So obviously they're growing their teams. 11 & Co have managed to scale to 13.
Yeah.
What's the benefit to those 13 to join a Liberate founder versus joining a brokerage? Because it does, they're not founders.
But they do get the same support, and they're working with the same team of advisors and admin and creative staff and marketing staff that their partner would. And remember, they're not competing with hundreds of other brokers to get in line. And we, the way we set up each one of these businesses, we give them the requisite amount of resources and capacity to give them and maintain that Liberate high-tech, high-touch promise that we make early on to their partners. So that's the difference.
It's really interesting because as a startup, you could be a tech startup, a prop tech startup, any startup in the region is going to have a really challenging time raising funds. This is a known, this is a given. But I think in real estate, if you're an agent and you want to set up your own brokerage, you will not be short of investors ready to put in $1 million, $2 million, whatever you need. I think this is the easiest industry to raise or to get an investor on board. What would your warning be to those agency? It might even be like a buyer of theirs or a seller of theirs that says, "Oh, I like the way you do business. Why don't you set up your own agency? Here's $1 million." I think that's quite common. So what would you say to them to say, no, don't take that money?
Be careful, because that money may come with certain expectations, and because they're kind of not living it with you, you may find yourself having someone on your cap table that is unreasonable in terms of how long it might take to return that capital back, etc., and kind of putting unneeded pressure on you. So the best kind of support you can get is the capital that comes with domain expertise or brings other skill sets to the table that you don't have. And frankly, that story that I just shared about 11 & Co. is a real life example where they were offered capital by someone in their network, a client that they worked with very well, but they picked Liberate because they saw the value add that came with that capital, right? And like I said, the amazing thing about the Liberate founding team is just how complementary the four of us are. It is also quite unusual, right? You've heard of co-founders being two, but here we're four, and each one brings something different to the table. And so it's like having this incredible board, if you will, that joins you, that advises you.
And how often can one tap into this advisory board or this board?
In the incubation onboarding process, we could be meeting, and talking multiple times a week. And then eventually we start meeting once a week, and then maybe once every 2 weeks. And then eventually it might become once a month, because we also don't want to get in the way, right? Especially once we feel that business is humming along. And certainly some of our businesses are already at that stage. We start to give them space to run, because the last thing anybody needs is someone to also micromanage them. And that's definitely not what we're here to do. And that's why it's so important that we identify the right candidate who has the right experience, track record, maturity, and mindset, so that we can give them the support that they need, but then give them the space that they need to then go and run.
And how have some of your founders evolved personally in their first year?
Nina is a great example, right? I think she started with this mindset of City Walk, secondary ready, original City Walk, and now we're starting to think bigger. We're starting to go into off plan. We're looking to recruit our first batch of brokers to expand beyond City Walk. Super proud of her, because right, it's kind of it's like I might be losing control. I now have to manage people, etc. Or it's her sister, for example, being petrified about doing cold outreach to build inventory, etc. Because till date, a lot of their business is built on referrals and network, but seeing new muscles and new abilities being built and growing their potential is amazing. And we saw that at Cityglow, seeing someone like Rona, who was a traditional broker, been in the market for 15 plus years, now elevate to such a level where developers are consulting her for advice on how to go to market or on the spec of the project, because she sold so much real estate during her career. So seeing her also kind of grow and mature and be able to build her brand in such a manner that she's now being approached by these developers makes us incredibly proud, and it's nice to see that development. And the rest are also are going through that progression, right? And we expect that the brokerage that we onboard in year one will look very different from what it's going to be in year 3 or 4 or 5. Once they've built teams around them and probably have expanded into other niches.
So what have you learned from these 6 launches that changes how you're operating for the next cohort?
What we're bringing into the second cohort is that intention around leading and building teams. So we're going to be focusing more on those types of personas. We're looking for people that have a niche, have a specialism. It's very hard to teach someone to be a specialist, and I think that's the part where you have to bring that to the table. We're not gonna give it to you, and then giving them the tools and the access and the support that they need to be able to punch through that ceiling that they may have previously reached at either their brokerage of record or within their own network, and being able to kind of grow their existing network, or to be able to manage that network better using a combination of the support, but also the tech that we also give them in day one.
I want to address something openly. We've spoken very freely about Abdullah being co-founder, and I just want to talk about that relationship between the incubated brokerages and Driven.
Mm-hmm.
So how is Liberate and your Liberate founders structurally independent from Driven?
All 6 of these companies are standalone businesses where the broker founder owns 100% of them. So they are 100% independent. Liberate is an independent company startup where we share a shareholder. But Abdullah, myself, Sebastian, and Alex are all co-founders and shareholders of Liberate, which, like I said, is a separate company from Driven. The connection is, Abdullah, the access that Abdullah has given us and our Liberate portfolio access to Driven, its sister companies and its brokers and its relationships. That's the unfair advantage, if you will, that we have through this partnership.
And so would you be sharing the CRM with Driven agents, or how does that work?
No. So the CRMs, Driven runs on a very different CRM than what we've been building and supplying to our partners. So there's no sharing of technology in that regard. It's more sharing of access, collaboration,
proximity to success.
Exactly, right? And then in terms of the actual infrastructure, like I said, in the beginning, as these Liberate partners are getting set up and building their teams and eventually grow into that office, which can sometimes be a very expensive investment for them, they can operate out of the Liberate premises, or the which is currently out of the Driven Forbes office. But what we've noticed with most top brokers, when you push them really on the office piece, it's they actually say, I don't spend that much time in the office. So then they quickly kind of backpedal on the importance of that. So that's my other advice, is that unless it's really part of your culture and your operating rhythms, you may want to postpone that investment. But we give them access to that if they want. And even if they want it in close proximity, which we're doing now with one of our partners, they're going to take an office in the building. There's a co-working, co-managed office space just one floor above.
And finally, JP, for someone who's listening out there that thinks, this is for me, what would your call to action be?
To get in touch, reach out to myself or any one of the co-founders. We have a website, xliberate.com. I'm at jp@xliberate.com if anybody wants to drop me an email. We'll also provide a link to a form, a sign-up form, to share a little bit information about yourself. And if you're listening to this and Liberate may not be a fit for you, but you may know somebody who is, we're happy to share that we're offering an incentive of 20,000 dirhams for every partner that you refer, and we pay it out after they do their first transaction, irrespective of how big that transaction is.
And they call it a bounty.
Yeah. So you can be a bounty hunter.
Yes, very, very wild west. Yeah. So, okay. Thank you very much, JP. I wish you all the best of luck, you and your cohort 1 and the upcoming cohorts. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. Please like, share, and subscribe.
Thank you.